The Punjab and Haryana High Court has stayed an order passed by the Haryana government, which reserves 75% jobs in private sector as well for those who are locals of the state. Now, this is a very important decision that has come in from the High Court, because Haryana is not the only state who has chosen to reserve jobs in the private sector while facing with the mounting unemployment that is now seen in many parts of the country. Several other states have also resorted to this. It's something which works politically. It was an announcement made by one of the coalition partners in the government of Haryana right now before the elections, and was clearly a popular declaration to make. But it is against the constitution, or so it seems. Right now, this has been stayed, but we're taking the opportunity today to talk about the wider issue of unemployment and whether reserving jobs in the private sector is something that can legally be done and should be done. But before we get to that discussion, let me go across to my colleague Abhimanyu, who has been tracking the story, for more on what happened in court.
The Punjab and Haryana High Court has stayed the 75% reservation for local residents in private sector jobs in the state. Admitting a petition filed by Faridabad Industrial Association, the High Court stayed a law which was passed by the Haryana government. In December 2021, the High Court had asked the state government to file a reply. Appearing for the Haryana government, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta submitted that the state law is prospective in nature and has a presumption of constitutionality, and hence it should not be stayed. He had also argued that most industries were in favor of this law and only few were opposing. However, the petitioner before the High Court had submitted that the state law is unconstitutional and violates the fundamental right to equality. The petitioner had claimed that any state cannot grant reservation merely based on domicile or without quantifiable data, while referring to previous judgments passed by various high courts as well as the Apex Court. It remains to be seen whether the state government is going to challenge the stay in a higher court of law, and whether there are going to be any new developments from the High Court in this regard.
All right, to speak more on this, I am joined today by Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate at the Supreme Court, Rituparna Chakraborty, Co-founder of TeamLease, and DP Goel, Co-Chair of the MSME Committee at the PHDCCI. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today. Mr. Hegde, let me begin by getting your legal view on whether this flies constitutionally, because as I mentioned in the opening of the show, Haryana is not the only state which is attempting to do this. Several states have resorted to wanting to reserve jobs in the private sector. And of course, there are political reasons for doing this. But the question is it legal?
Well, reservation of jobs per se, whether that would be constitutional or not is a different question. It is possibly constitutional if it is done in the right manner. Here was a state reservation of 75%. No reservations can be beyond 50%. There has to be an equality of opportunity in public employment. As far as private employment is concerned, now supposing there is a manufacturer who manufactures a lot of things for the state, whose entire market is within the state. Supposing the state says that in that manufacture you have to reserve a certain portion for locals, not exceeding 50%. I think that there may be an arguable case for sustaining such a reservation. But this kind of blanket reservation of 75% in all jobs, that certainly is not constitutional. And the theory of the Constitution largely is of a single common market all over India. You cannot necessarily distinguish based on place of birth alone. That distinction would also be unconstitutional. Now, how do you define a resident, a permanent resident of a particular state? If there were residence requirements, say that somebody should be a resident of a state for at least 10 years, 20 years, and those people are to be given preference, that may be a way of going about it. I really suspect that politicians just want to pass a law which they think will bring them votes. And they fully well know that the courts will stay it. That is why they make the most outrageous of claims while drafting the law.
You know, even the point about whether domiciled citizens should really be given reservation is then now another question mark in a country like India, because the constitution gives you the right to work anywhere and live and travel to anywhere in the country. But the point that Sanjay Hegde made about even governments knowing that this is not going to stand the scrutiny of a court, and there are several examples of it. The states of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, MP, Telangana, all at different times have attempted to enact such laws. Some of them just didn't implement it, some didn't notify it. But Mr. Goel, from industry point of view, it still has had a pretty chilling effect, because you've had two industry associations who are the petitioners in this case. What has been the concern here, considering that even in this Haryana law, it said that they will implement this only for employees under 50,000 rupees of salary. So they have said this is for a specific category of employees. Some may argue that higher skilled employees need not fall under this reservation.
Madam, the question is, they have asked for the lower category of the employees. That means below not 50 but even less than 30,000 rupees. I asked a very simple question, that is the farmer not an MSME? When the season for sowing the seeds comes, they call labor from other states also, because the kind of labor that is required for sowing the seeds is not available within Haryana. Rather, the quantum is not available within Haryana. Now, this may be a temporary feature. Another part is, if you go to the construction industry, you would require specialized labor. For example, the labor for plumbing job comes mainly from Odisha. These people are capable of doing the plumbing work much faster and in a better way compared to any other state labor which is available all over the country. If I ask for Haryana, this kind of labor is not available. You look at the medical profession, nurses, they mostly come either from down south or northeast. Now the nurses, if we employ from within Haryana, they are not available. So it is a question whether the sufficient kind of labor is available within the state or not. The intent of the government is good. They want that more and more people from the state should get the employment. But the implementation could be little better had they said that industries who are employing more than 75% or more than 50% local labor from within Haryana, they will be given the incentive. Now this will be satisfying the labor also, and this will be satisfying the industries also. Because industries are not compelled to employ labor from Haryana, but they will get the incentive by the government if they employ the labor from Haryana. Another part is, there is a construction boom, let's say in Gurgaon. Now, how many thousands of labor is required for the construction industry is a big question. Is that kind of labor available from within Haryana? If it is not, then how this law will be implemented? So, the giving incentive, I think, should be a better way for implementing this scheme as well as satisfying the industries. Industries already suffer a lot because of the COVID-19, because of the non-availability of electricity, because of the pollution control board, because of the dharnas every now and then in many part of the NCR. Now, this kind of a, again, obstruction for the industry may be unproductive. This will increase the tension of the industries. So I think that should be avoided, and rather incentive should be given for the local employment.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying an incentive-based program makes more sense. Rituparna, I recall our conversation when this was first announced. We spoke about it when it was notified, and I remember you saying very clearly that if any state does this, industry will just up and leave. But here you have had industry fighting back and saying, give us incentives instead. Do you think that any version of this is tenable? Because going forward, you are going to have the issue of unemployment increase even more. Local authorities, administration, state governments are going to be forced to come and find some kind of solution that works. And the question of reservation in the private space will be, returned to again and again.
Thanks, Tamanna. I think I completely agree with Mr. Goel when he says that an incentive-based approach actually shows the best intent. It also shows that the local government is actually trying to attract investments and jobs. So the best solution to problems, to solve for local unemployment or solve for problems which are on account of the pandemic and the losses that we have witnessed, would be to create incentives, encouragement, motivations to attract employers to come and set up, expand, experiment, and create the increase the net sum of jobs in a particular state, rather than come out with policies like reservation which detract them from building performance-oriented organizations where it's based on competency and skills rather than on reservations, right? I mean, India has huge plans of being, one of the biggest GDPs. Per capita income should go up. In line with that, an incentive-based approach is much tenable outcomes and sustainable outcomes than these knee-jerk ones. And not just that, Tamanna, Madam Finance Minister in her budget speech emphasized about how government is trying to improve productivity, right? I mean, overarching the country needs a huge ramp up on productivity, and various schemes are being announced. One nation, one registration. And here, this is seemed to be a decision, or was seeming to be a decision, which is exactly in the opposite direction, right? Where you're creating fictions. There was an announcement on 25,000 compliances being reduced, 1,400 or 1,500 union laws being repealed. All of this was to ensure that the corporate India industries have ease of doing business. If this entire process where you have to go to a portal, update, prove whether the person is a resident, be ready for audits, it's not required. It is not what the industry needs at this point of time. Of course, India as a country have to think about equitable distribution of good quality jobs. It's a fact today that the North and the East have the manpower, while the better quality, high quality jobs are in the West and the East. And this migration of labor was the only way out for a country like India, where there is such a huge disparity. So for local governments, state governments, the focus has to be, in the long run, how can I make myself self-reliant, self-sufficient, so that there is enough quantum of job, high quality of job, which meets the wage aspiration of the youth, and it gets generated through incentive rather than reservation politics.
One more aspect to this, and let me bring Sanjay Hegde in here to also respond to some of what Rituparna said and Mr. Goel has also said. It seems to suggest that industry believes certain skill sets are better performed by people from certain parts of the country. Now, that is in itself something that can be debated and questioned. Is it necessary that nurses cannot be trained and found in Haryana, for example? Is it necessary that certain kind of construction work or certain kind of skills cannot be found in Haryana? And if a government is trying to promote that, then how do they do it without flouting what the Constitution really gives each Indian, the right to work anywhere?
Well, what Mr. Goel and Rituparna are saying is use the carrot rather than the stick. And there's nothing in the Constitution which prevents any state government from using carrots. If it if it says that as part of our position of encouraging people from our state, we will incentivize employers, there's nothing in the constitution which says, no, you cannot do that. How a state spends its money is its business. So, and as far as the point of social, certain societies producing certain kinds of workmen or labor or anything, well, it comes from a background which is not very easy to replicate. Yes, Kerala does produce a lot of nurses, but that is primarily because the church in Kerala was pretty proficient in turning out either nuns or nurses. Or the same thing has come from the Northeast. Similarly, the hospitality sector sees a huge infusion from the Northeast. So if a government were to say, no, you train people, if the Haryana government were to say, you train a sturdy Haryana peasantry into the service sector, and we will give you an incentive for that. Perfectly logical, perfectly possible, and not at all unconstitutional. But on the other hand, if you say that you will not employ anybody except somebody who has been domiciled in Haryana for a certain period of time, or worse, somebody who has been born in Haryana, then that would certainly be unconstitutional.
So give the carrot rather than the stick. I want to also take this opportunity to speak about the bigger issue, which has now come to the forefront even more so after the presentation of the budget. And Mr. Goel, let me come to you on this. That's the question of jobs. We know that the question of employment has reared its head once again. The pandemic impact is being seen. Many are asking, did the budget do enough to give jobs? In your view, and especially because you represent the MSME space, where is the solution to increase the number of jobs?
Our MSMEs are quite capable of producing the jobs, provided we are allowed to work. There are so many ifs and buts in the way of our operations. Let me tell you, the demand is very high. We can compete not only in the Indian market, but in the world market. We are producing quality goods. Our goods and services are well accepted abroad in various countries. But if you look at the operations of the MSME, every step we have to fight for our survival. If the government can give us the provisions, or if they can make our path little more comfortable, if they do not put any roadblock, as I told you about these dharnas, the industrial areas in the NCR around Delhi, all the industrial areas were chopped for almost 13 months. Now, had it not been done, the industry's growth could have been much better also. COVID-19 killed most of the industries. Price rise on the raw materials, there is no control of the government, and it is going through the roof. Now, if the raw materials are made available, if the electricity is made available, quality electricity, timely electricity, uninterrupted, if this kind of, we do not ask for any rebate or concessions or subsidies, but we simply want that we should be allowed to work. And if we are allowed to work smoothly, if no obstructions are added on our way to, then probably our industries can produce much more. They can do better, they can grow better. The government has to only give us the smooth way of working. That is all we need from the government.
That's really a key message that needs to go out, that creating jobs is the job of the government, central and state, and the way to do that is to allow small and medium industries to flourish and grow, because they are the biggest employers, not by then eyeing that little pie of jobs that they have somehow created despite all of the obstructions. And hopefully that's the message which will go out to policymakers after the Punjab and Haryana High Court's decision to state this 75% reservation in private jobs. With that, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you.